Nigel Farage recently had his Coutts Bank account closed, and the release of an internal memo from the bank, which Farage managed to get hold of after a subject access request, appeared to show that his political views were part of the reason he was, quote, debanked. But that was only after the BBC published this story. Nigel Farage bank account shut for falling below wealth limit, source tells BBC. Co-written by the BBC's business editor Simon Jack, the story went on to say this. Nigel Farage fell below the financial threshold required to hold an account at Coutts, the prestigious private bank for the wealthy, the BBC has been told. It is understood he was subsequently offered a standard account at NatWest, which owns Coutts. Mr. Farage has said he believes his account is being shut for political reasons, and he's since been turned down by 9 other lenders. But a source familiar with Coutts' move said it was a commercial decision. Last week, Dame Alison Rose, the CEO of NatWest Group, which owns Coutts is a subsidiary of NatWest, wrote to Farage with this apology. I am writing to apologise for the deeply inappropriate comments about yourself made in the now published papers prepared for the Wealth Committee. I believe very strongly that freedom of expression and access to banking are fundamental to our society, and it is absolutely not our policy to exit a customer on the basis of legally held political and personal views. Well, the documents that Farage got hold of would seem to indicate otherwise. That was the bank's apology. On Monday, it was the BBC's turn. This was Farage on GB News.
I felt that the BBC, frankly, were being a little bit slow in correcting the story and changing the headline. And I thought the hurt the story had caused me was such that actually I really wanted an apology. Well, BBC apologies are very, very rare. They only happen once every few years. But today I got that apology, and it began with Simon Jack, the BBC's business editor. And he says, the information on which we based our reporting on Nigel Farage and his bank accounts came from a trusted and senior source. Interesting. However, the information turned out to be incomplete and inaccurate. Therefore, I would like to apologise to Mr. Farage. On top of that, I got a letter this afternoon, which I was pleased to get, and it came from Deborah Turness, the CEO of BBC News and Current Affairs. And I'm going to put the letter up on your screen now. And let's go through what is significant. Made very, very clear that it repeated that the information turned out to be inaccurate. And at the bottom of that paragraph, she says, I would therefore like to apologise to you on behalf of BBC News. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Simon Jack. Thank you, Deborah Turness. I know some will say it took too long, but thank you. A fulsome apology from the BBC is not something that happens very often. I'm delighted to get it.
It looks like Coutts and the BBC aren't out of the woods yet, though. That's after the Telegraph reported this. Pressure mounts on NatWest chairman over Farage Bank scandal. The article goes on to say this. Dame Alison's career is hanging in the balance after the BBC apologised on Monday for an inaccurate story that claimed Coutts, which is owned by NatWest, shut down Mr. Farage's bank accounts because he did not meet its financial requirements. The broadcaster said the story by Simon Jack, its business editor, had come from a, quote, trusted and senior source. Mr. Jack sat next to Dame Alison at a charity dinner in London the night before the article was published. Days earlier, Mr. Farage had disclosed that his account with Coutts had been closed, quote, without explanation. Sir Howard Davies, NatWest chairman, is now facing calls to launch a board-level inquiry into the leak. I have to say, I find this a pretty remarkable story, and it works on multiple levels. Firstly, Farage is debanked. You might not care about that. I think it's bad because this will happen. It will come for the left eventually, this stuff. But park that. Then something is briefed to the BBC, which it appears is untrue, and the BBC publish it. That, to me, is far more concerning, particularly as somebody on the left, because there's a few things. Firstly, big institutions like Coutts are perfectly happy to lie. Secondly, the BBC aren't that fastidious in checking whether or not they're being honest. Maurice, I have to say, and maybe this is why I'm actually quite sympathetic to Farage on this, I have to say this whole account, this whole ordeal, it reminds me of Corbyn. Because what you have is a big institution misrepresenting the truth. They say something which is inaccurate to journalists, and they repeat what they're told with any kind of skepticism whatsoever. And so I think for some people watching or listening here at Novara, I think, why is Aaron defending, Farage? I saw the same time after time after time with Jeremy Corbyn after 2015. And I'm done with it, frankly. I think if you lie, if this is Alison Rose, by the way, I think she has to face serious consequences.
You're right. We can't have a situation where your political views, restrict you from something like banking. We just simply can't have that. If it's going to happen to someone like Farage, it's definitely going to happen to left-wing organisations. So we need to be very aware of that. But seeing him sort of bleat on as it's like having Man United versus Man City. It's you've got Nigel Farage against Coutts Bank. I can't be really cheering for either of them. He's been treated badly, and it's exactly what happened and happens to the left. It's exactly the sort of smears that happen, not just against Corbyn, but against the families of someone who's killed by the police, or there's a really familiar sort of flow to this, where powerful institutions are able to get their messages not just out there, but get them accepted as fact. And, maybe with an apology a tiny bit later. So it does matter, but I hate having to care about Nigel Farage.